Hi, and welcome back to the next Channel 1 topic hour, this time about security for the intelligent enterprise and how our customers can actually implement security standards as they are developing applications. So, Ceci, can you tell us a bit more what we're up to now?
Yeah, so in this hour, again, it's going to be a mixture of live and pre-recorded elements. We are actually going to start with a live expert interview. We're going to have Joe Campbell with us in just a few minutes. Next up, we're also going to show a demo showing how you can use the new innovations in the Cloud Identity Services within your applications. We're also going to have a customer interview. Nestle is going to be talking about their very kind of complex hybrid landscape setup and how they're implementing Cloud Identity Services as well. And then we'll end the hour, as always, with an expert Q&A. So remember, register on saptechit.com. Once you register, you can go to the Channel 1 overview page, and just at, I think it's like, it would be left, right? So left
like
side,
here,
you have a panel where you can enter all your questions, and then all the top voted questions would be part of the expert Q&A at the end. But you can already start entering them now.
Yeah, and let's not forget to remind people that we will also share the sessions that you can have around security also at the end of this hour.
All the content, and also that all the content will be available on demand after TechEd. So again, we know that we're providing a lot of information, kind of compacting it into 48 hours. You're getting a lot of insights about new products, new innovations, changes, updates. But don't worry, you don't have to consume it all at once. You can always go back and rewatch videos or watch them for the first time. And of course, if you still have questions, even though TechEd is over, you can always go to community.sap.com and ask your questions in the Q&A forum, right?
Exactly. Yeah, thanks, Ceci. But now let's move forward to the next slot with Joe Campbell. Joe is a CISO of the Business Technology Platform security team, and his role is not focused solely on cybersecurity topics, but also the development of customer-facing and internally shared security products and services. We heard a lot of services are already used across all the solutions from SAP. He enjoys the efforts to translate the binary nature of security policy into actionable and agile development methodologies. Hello, Joe. How are you doing? Nice to see you.
Hey, how are you guys doing? Thanks for having me today. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We are fantastic. Joe, we have just started the Channel 1 topic hour around security. And as a first question, we'd like actually to understand how SAP actually manages security. Can you please elaborate a little bit on that part?
You know, it's interesting. I get asked this question a lot because we have a global security organization, which has a CISO, Richard Puckett, Tim McKnight, who's the chief security officer. And then you have a CISO of the BTP Core platform. And it's kind of like, well, why do we have these two roles and security leaders that seem to be split? And I like to explain it in a very simple way, I think. The Global Security Organization is responsible for a number of different things, but in particular, they develop policy, they enforce compliance, and I like to, you basically said it in the intro, I like to try to say to people sometimes that security rules can often be very binary, right? We're talking to technical people, developers here, right? So I think they'll get the notion of saying security is often very binary. And when you come to an organization like ours, it's a kind of a nuanced specialty to say, how do we take these binary security policies and implement them in ways that allow our teams to develop and produce software that's engaging and extended into a customer's security portfolio. And so basically that's the way that I like to try to explain what we do. We're about making the platform secure, but also enforcing our core security policies that come down from us from the Global Security Organization. And then basically trying to find ways to integrate that into our customers' platforms. So it's a fairly unique and dynamic job. I mean, it's something that I love. I love coming to work every day and solving problems and trying to figure out ways to make it better. So it's an interesting field. I think I'm definitely looking forward to more questions and getting a little deeper into the subject, that's for sure.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much, Joe. I mean, it's a pleasure to have you here and just walking us through like kind of all the basics and then more deep dive information. So now I actually want to turn it around a little bit. So again, you mentioned this event is for developers. So let's talk about what we actually offer developers. How do we help them to implement security into their applications?
Yeah, it's funny. I think sometimes I like to think of BTP as an enterprise in and of itself, right? So if you take some of the largest customers we have, some of the largest corporations we have, and we talk about enterprise security, I basically need to do the same thing in BTP, right? We are essentially one of the largest enterprises in the world, and it's an enterprise that's made up of customers from around the globe. And so I actually have the same challenges that our customers have, right? We need to make sure that, first of all, I produce an environment that is safe for the customer's data, right? That they know that they can bring their data here, and we will protect it with proper privileged access management, encryption and cryptography strategies, et cetera, right? And so there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes that I think when it comes to like, what do we offer our customers? It's like, there's a lot that we're offering that they don't even know, right? That they're not even aware of. Intrusion detection and prevention, threat detection. It just goes on and on and on. Everything that our customers do to make their own data center secure, we're doing the same thing here. But, right, you were a little bit more specific with your question. Our team is responsible, again, for developing essentially a large collection of security services that basically allow our customers to extend their security landscape transparently into BTP. And so what do I mean by that? When a customer when they're building applications on our platform, let's just think of it this way, and one of their employees is coming online and they're saying, all right, let's go ahead and give this employee access into an application running in BTP. I need to know who that employee is. I need to know what those attributes of the employee are. And I need to make sure that the authorization policies that you have inside your company can be extended to our platform. And so what I want to make sure is that there isn't, there's almost no distinction between how you implement security within your own corporation and then what you see when you extend that security to BTP. So in other words, it should be seamless. And so I need to make sure that the tools that are required to make that happen exist and are exposed to our customers that are developing on the platform. So for instance, I wouldn't necessarily say that for you to get that seamless experience, the developers that are building applications on BTP need to fiddle with firewall rules and things like that. I've got that covered for you, right? But I definitely need to make sure that you have the tools to enable single sign-on, role-based access control, et cetera. And so that's the way that I kind of look at it. I want to make sure that our customers' experience when they're deploying applications onto the platform is that there's like a seamless transition of security that they've developed on-prem and how that's represented on the platform, right? They shouldn't notice that it's changing. Yeah. Hopefully that makes sense to a lot of folks listening. Yeah.
I think it will.
Yeah, I think it definitely does. So I think your point was also about if I'm building, as a customer, I'm building now an application with a business technology platform that my users in my company not necessarily now get some pop-in saying, okay, you need now to log on to an SAP system. It's all integrated into one environment that is then integrated with the customer environment, correct?
Right. Yeah. It's funny. It's really interesting, I think, when you talk to people about security. I've used the same analogy for years and years and years. And so, again, you mentioned geeks before. Someone had on the social wall the youngest geek. So the youngest geek will eventually discover what a 20-sided Dungeons and Dragons die is, right? And so I use this analogy all the time because people come and they say, what is security? It's IAM, right? And I go, well, wait a second. That's just one facet of a 20-sided Dungeons and Dragons die. I mean, we can talk about all sorts of things. However, to be honest with you, it's fairly accurate when we talk about what the core mission is to extend this security fabric from the customer's environment to ours. Almost exclusively that falls underneath identity and access management. So you're absolutely right. It's about single sign-on. It's about provisioning and deprovisioning. So yeah, that's really, I think, what a lot of people are looking at us for.
Yeah.
Managing also the user rights, right?
So in that sense, Joe, so we are talking now about the business technology platform. What role does the identity and access management actually play in the security portfolio across SAP?
Right. It's interesting. I mentioned earlier that we have the same challenges as our customers have with identity. And so, again, you hear this cliche in the industry, mergers and acquisitions, right? What happens when you acquire a company and you need to basically get those people onto your identity platform? We all deal with the same challenges, right? So we deal with issues with single sign-on. Again, we deal with issues like access control. And so that's basically one of the things that extends across the entire ecosystem at SAP is this notion of identity and access management. But again, we deal with the same challenges our customers do. So for instance, we'll make an acquisition and the next thing we have to do is talk about, okay, if our customers are going to be using the technology that we just acquired, we need to make sure that those folks are onboarded to our kernel identity services. I think we're going to talk a lot more about that today with some of the other folks that are coming up. And so again, it's like, I'd love to share with people just that we're kind of like on the same journey, right? Like I need to make sure that all of our products are speaking the same language, speaking the same single sign-on, speaking the same attribute-driven access control, et cetera. And so again, it's really interesting. We talk about the fact that our organization in BTP Core Security, we do cover every single one of these 20-sided die. But again, without IAM and without that mission and the investment that the rest of SAP is making to make sure that we're all joining on to the same IAM infrastructure, it's going to be frustrating for our customers, right? So that's the journey that we're on, and it's almost a never-ending journey, right? So again, we're making a tremendous amount of investments when it comes to IAM, and a tremendous amount of time is being spent to make sure that new technologies that are coming on board into our ecosystem are integrated into that. So again, I don't bring customers to the platform and they feel speed bumps as they're going from one technology to another one. We just can't have that.
Right. And I think what's super interesting is that we've also seen that as kind of a common thread with the other LOBs as well. So what you just mentioned about, SAP using SAP and specifically the LOB solutions really integrating with the platform and using kind of the same IAM solutions and security solutions that we offer to our customers so that then it's easier when our customers implement multiple SAP solutions is also what we saw, for example, in the customer experience hour. When we were talking to the experts, they were like, yeah, we want to build our extensions on SAP BTP. We want to leverage, for example, the low-code, no-code capabilities of SAP AppGyver so that our customers can leverage those as well. And it's much easier to use, again, the SAP portfolio if we're all speaking the same language, like you said. So that was perfectly put.
Yeah, you said earlier, by the way, you used the phrase, drink our own champagne, right?
Yeah.
And so everyone loves using that phrase, but I mean, like, yeah, it's part of our core mission statement here.
It's a journey, right? Definitely. Okay, excellent. So kind of talking about that, setup and maybe a more complex hybrid landscape. So not just a very simple scenario. We're also going to hear from Nestle in a couple of minutes. So during the security hour, we'll have a customer interview with them. And they really do have kind of a complex setup, right? So they have a huge landscape with SAP and non-SAP applications. They have also they use other identity directories as well as SAP. Do you have maybe recommendations for other customers that are kind of have a similar use case or kind of a similar complex hybrid landscape setup?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and it it kind of reminds me of, I guess you would say, the juxtaposition of a cloud-based organization, BTP. Do we think about the on-prem stuff? Do we leave it behind? I mean, what's our strategy? How do we tackle that? And the funny thing is that SAP comes from an on-prem, history, an on-prem background. So we like the notion that our customers are most likely going to be hybrid customers is a first-class citizen in our decision making, right? So we do very little without this knowledge of, like, let's make sure that there's a bridge from the on-prem hybrid systems that our customers have. By the way, whether that's something else, an AD domain or an SAP technology, it doesn't really matter. But one of the things that's kind of proof in the pudding, right? We say that the proof is in the pudding. When the BTP security organization was created, the technology that we use for things like authorization and single sign-on and on-prem systems for SAP, that was brought into our organization, right? And so it's not like we have this faraway organization that deals with single sign-on and our on-prem solutions. That's part of our team, right? So we don't make a move without considering the implications for hybrid landscapes. One more thing on that too. I think if anybody hasn't checked out the SAP blogs, right? What I don't know if you call it the blogosphere these days. Go check it out and literally put in like reference implementations, put in things like hybrid identity, and you're going to find articles from our program management or our product management teams that walk you through best case scenarios, proper ways to do things, and also kind of like reference implementations of what they're seeing with our customers, right? So anyway, two things just to summarize on this point. We treat the notion of the fact that most of our customers are hybrid very seriously, which is, again, clearly evident. But for help on completing your journey to the cloud and how you transition from hybrid to cloud, go check our blogs. There's a lot of valuable information out there.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And I think if you are looking for it, just go to community.sap.com and look up those blog posts. What I really liked, Joe, the proof is in the pudding. I need to create a hashtag for that. I think what is important also then to actually work together with customers very closely, because I can imagine not every company is the same like the other, right? We also heard and will hear from Nestle that they have very complex landscapes. Other companies have maybe smaller landscapes. And I'm wondering how the collaboration model looks like between SAP and the customers. Are there co-innovation projects? Actually, how do the customers actually influence what we are doing around security? Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, if we didn't talk to our customers on a regular basis, we wouldn't be able to succeed, right? And so it's really funny because we've seen this in our own lives and our own families. Like if we put our blinders on and basically say, we're doing the right thing, everything's good, we don't need to check with anybody, eventually you're going to run into a problem, right? And so the notion of communicating with our customers is it's absolutely critical. So the first thing I did when I took on this role is Michael Friedrich is going to join us in a second. I asked him, I said, hey, where's our customer advisory boards? Like what's the pathway that customers get to talk to us and have this input? And so you're right, we have basically global advisory groups, customer advisory groups. A lot of people don't know that happens, but we meet with these folks on a fairly regular basis. And sometimes those conversations are really happy conversations, right? It's like, wow, we just implemented this feature and it solved this problem. But most often it's our customers saying, hey, look, the industry is going in this direction. Are you going to match? Like take the FIDO initiative. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more today. I mean, everybody has been talking about FIDO for a while. If we put our blinders on, we wouldn't have jumped on that. And it had a lot to do with our customer advisory boards. So finally, yeah, the co-innovation is also something that I find really exciting. And quite honestly, in some of the other companies I've been in, I haven't seen as much of that as I do at SAP. Perfect. So for instance, right now we're working with an aerospace contractor in the United States. We're working with technology companies in Europe. And these are actually like innovation projects where we're developing APIs hand in hand with our customers. And again, I don't see that in too many places where it's one thing to listen to what a customer has to say. It's another thing to almost give them like keys to the back door and say, join us as we go and develop this new API. So we do both of these things.
Excellent.
Okay, great, fantastic. Joe, this was very, very enlightening for me. And I just learned today that the proof is in the pudding. So thank you so much for having joined us here and giving us your insights. And see you then. Bye-bye.
See you back later. Bye.
Bye-bye, Joe.
You. See you.
Thank you. So we got from Joe, I think, a very good overview on how SAP manages security within its own portfolio and how we can actually collaborate with customers and partners. And as Joe just mentioned before, we will have now also a demo from Marco around innovations in the Identity Authentication Service. And that's what we will actually see right now.
Hello, my name is Marco Sommer. I'm Product Manager for SAP Security, and I wanted to share some insights for you into some recent innovation that we released in the Identity Authentication Service. It's about secure and strong authentication based on the FIDO standard. With the Identity Authentication Service, We are, as of today, offering already various ways how users can provide their secret in order to successfully authenticate at the Identity Authentication Service. That ranges from basic authentication, but also passwordless authentication with X509 certificates or Campbell's SPNego. We can also validate credentials remotely in a corporate identity provider via a secure tunnel based on the cloud connector. We have various ways for multi-factor authentication. We are supporting SMS, time-based one-time password tokens, as well as web authentication. This was already beginning of this year, our first innovation that we supported this FIDO standard for stronger means of authentication. And this is something that we recently extended to leverage also FIDO standard as a first factor. And this gives a unique opportunity also for smaller customers who cannot afford a PKI infrastructure with certificate-based authentication to allow passwordless authentication for their users. So this is a very fundamentally new technology that we are offering as a first factor, and that gives an even richer set of capabilities that the Identity Authentication Service offers. Now, let's have a look behind the scenes, what FIDO actually is all about. So FIDO, Fast Identity Online, is in principle based on a collaboration of various companies that with the goal to abandon the need for passwords. Password-based authentication is judged as one of the most significant risks that companies face in the internet. And so this is something that these companies want to get rid of. A few years ago, this consortium of various companies released the FIDO2 standard, and this standard became very popular. As web authentication, it was adopted as a programming model by the World Wide Web Consortium for web-based applications. And this is actually what the identity authentication makes use of. Now, let's have a look how such a scenario technically works and what's actually the difference compared to authentication methods like basic authentication with username and password. In a typical scenario, an end user wants to access an SAP Cloud solution. This cloud solution delegates authentication to the Identity Authentication Service. Then the Identity Authentication Service will prompt the user with a login screen where he enters his username and password. And this secret is conveyed, of course, in a protected communication, but it's conveyed to the Identity Authentication Service where, on the server side, these credentials are validated. Now that's different with FIDO. So here, the Identity Authentication Service sends a challenge to the client to validate a secret that the user provides. And this is a biometric secret that is supported on the device. So that can be fingerprint authentication or facial recognition. And then it's a means of cryptography. In principle, the client sends a signed response back to the Identity Authentication Service, which received at the time of registration the public key, and then can validate the response whether this user was indeed the holder of the secret. And in that way, the need for having the secret on the server side is abundant, and thus it's a far more secure and elegant way for users how to authenticate. Okay, let's have a look at the demo scenario. Here we have a quite simple setup. A business user wants to access an SAP SuccessFactors demo instance that we have here. The SuccessFactors application is configured to delegate authentication to the Identity Authentication Service. Usually the user then is challenged with a logon screen where he provides his credentials, but now we're going to change this authentication method and allow the user to provide biometric authentication, fingerprint authentication, and in a second scenario, we will request multi-factor authentication, which the user can provide, for instance, via a YubiKey. So that about the demo scenario that we have. Let's see how it looks like in the real scenario. accessing the application. That's the login screen to access the SuccessFactors demo instance. We first give it a try with the traditional way to authenticate with username and password. When the credentials were valid, identity authentication will grant access to SuccessFactors. Now let's log out and change the configuration. Here we see the administration console of the Identity Authentication Service, and we will adjust the settings for the trust configuration to the SuccessFactors demo instance. We have to change the authentication and access, and here we have a new button to allow biometric authentication, and we will see what changes on the logon screen. Let's refresh the application, and we see that a new button appears that allows to authenticate with biometric authentication. Here on my laptop, I have various demo users. That's why I have to select one. I scanned my finger with a fingerprint on my laptop, and thereafter I was successfully authenticated, and identity authentication granted me again access to the SuccessFactors instance. Okay, let's change the configuration again, and now ask for multi-factor authentication. We again have to adjust the configuration for the SuccessFactors demo instance, authentication and access, and change the configuration for the so-called risk-based authentication setting. We will change the default behavior to request a second factor, and as authentication protocol, we select web authentication. Let's save the settings and see what changes in the login behavior. We have to reload the application so that the settings will be adopted. We again will authenticate via Windows Fingerprint. And then I'm asked to provide a second factor. In that case here, I have to provide a YubiKey, provide a key for the YubiKey, thereafter touch the YubiKey in order to prove that I'm not a bot, and thereafter I'm again successfully authenticated, and identity authentication granted me access to the SuccessFactors instance. So that's brand new capabilities for the Identity Authentication Service, which we recently released. Thanks very much for watching this session about the Identity Authentication Service. My name is Marco Sommer, Product Manager for SAP Security. Bye-bye.
All right, well, that was a great demo by Marco showing how you could leverage Cloud Identity Service for multi-factor authentication, even with passwordless authentication for the first authentication step. And as Joe mentioned in the expert interview, we were able to add this feature because we heard the feedback from our customers. And speaking of customers, next up, we're going to have a video from Nestlé, and they're going to be explaining how they leverage Cloud Identity Services, their challenges, the highlights, the lowlights, and also how they collaborate with SAP throughout the process to continue their journey towards the cloud. So let's check it out.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for joining our session today. My name is Regine Schimmer. I'm a product manager for the SAP Security and Identity Management products. And I'm very happy that today we have with us here Kashish Arora. He's a technology expert at Nestlé, and he's responsible for Cloud Identity Services, identity management, BTP security, and for automating access management processes in his organization. We also have with us today my teammate Sonja. Sonja just recently joined the product management team after many years in consulting, so she has a lot of hands-on experience with helping customers and advising them on their identity and access management strategy. We're going to talk today about Nestlé's ongoing journey to the cloud and their strategy for a hybrid identity and access management, which is a challenge that many of our customers are faced with currently, or something at least that they are thinking about in terms of their IT strategy. SAP has a whole portfolio of solutions that we offer for identity and access management. So for on-premise, we have SAP Identity Management, SAP Single Sign-On, SAP Access Control, and then of course we have their counterparts in the cloud, the SAP Cloud Identity Services with identity authentication and identity provisioning. And then we also have SAP Cloud Identity Access Governance, the compliance solution for the cloud. But the true magic actually really happens when all of those come together to seamlessly create a holistic identity and access management approach for your entire landscape. And Sonia and Kashish will now tell us a little bit more about how Nestlé is working on making that magic happen. Over to you.
So I'll start with this. I think thanks Regina for the nice introduction and for giving the opportunity to share some thoughts. So starting with the big question, what is Nestlé actually currently doing in this area? Just to answer that, Nestlé is in a transformational journey evaluating the most sustainable and most suitable solutions within the SAP IAM portfolio. We have been preparing a phase-wise evolution for the products and services for the next few years, and we have considerable choices for each phases. Until now, we have been putting a lot of effort and focus on POCs and fit gap analysis, especially in the areas of cloud identity services, as you mentioned, S/4HANA migrations, automated access management, compliance in hybrid landscape. So basically, of course, in this phase, not everything would fall in place, and we have had to change the strategy multiple times, but we are still on a very progressive path, and we know that it is going to be a long journey. But definitely, we would like to have the readiness and parallel evolution of SAP security aligned with the adoption of intelligent enterprise technologies by Nestlé business or IT to keep up the pace in security. I also have some slide to share. It will be a quick overview of what we are doing in our landscape for provisioning in a hybrid landscape. So very quickly, if you can see on the left side, there is third-party IDM that we have, and which is managing the SAP and non-SAP identities lifecycle. Now we are leveraging CUA, which you can see on the bottom at the right side, and IDM for just cascading these access management in the SAP landscape. And because they have the integration readiness and built automated procedures for handling SAP area well. So for the hybrid landscape, we are using the same IAM setup by just incorporating in equivalent cloud services for cloud provisioning, which you can see on the top as Cloud Identity Services for all the SaaS and PaaS solutions. I think this just is a quick overview of how we are leveraging both the tools from SAP in both domains, cloud as well as on-premise in the hybrid landscape.
Kashish, thank you for sharing these details with us. So Nestlé is one of the early adopters of RISE. They are starting by moving all their systems to HEC and plan to gradually replace them by SAP PaaS and SaaS offerings. Would you like to share some updates on this?
Yeah, definitely. So talking about move to HEC, we have had great achievements since we were among the first to move SAP IDM to HEC on Azure, which was a very complicated approach, and also having a massive user base from Nestlé and a lot of systems to cover. So it was foolproof, and also not only it was cost effective in the end, but also performance effective as well. Now talking about SaaS and PaaS, I would say there's a huge list, but I cannot go through now. But in general, we have started with organizing the fundamentals, designing security frameworks, POCs, and roadmaps. So this is all we are going right now in all three areas. Yeah.
That's great. So you're gradually moving your user management process to the cloud. Which benefits do you see in this move?
Well, good question. To be honest, we do not see many benefits yet, but we do have a vision, and we are preparing our landscape for a journey to cloud to experience seamless onboarding of any SaaS and PaaS solutions. We could sense that more and more products from your portfolio would rely on cloud identity services, like, for example, success factors, and thus it becomes essential to adopt them early on to be first in the race, I would say. We were trying best.
All right. Tell us about the challenges and your plans for a cloud-based identity management approach.
Well, the plan is quite simple. Like everyone, is to smoothly transit without disrupting any processes or tools which are matured and working well. Also, possibly we have to look at the best of both worlds and replace only when it is better than the existing ones. The major challenges I can just say quickly are related to integration, logging, and some of the reporting visibility, I could say for now, yeah, which we have faced and reported.
Okay, understood. But how do you plan to integrate with your on-premise identity management infrastructure? You have an SAP Identity Management, but also a third-party identity management solution for your on-premise landscape.
Yeah, that's a good catch from the slide which I mentioned. So, well, as you can see, we have third-party third-party IDM managing the SAP as well as non-SAP lifecycle, and we are using the SAP IDM as just for the SAP landscape to cascade the best possibilities in automation and access management. So it's like, as I mentioned, best of both worlds. So we are using the best of features in each of them. And we are knowing the maturity levels as well. So based on this, this is a general decision. Maybe we can go in future about some other changes, but for now we are sure of this in this phase.
Hey, that's great. But what challenges did you face when you replicated the users to the cloud?
I would say too many challenges, and since we wanted the integration with third party, so there were a lot of connector issues, and we kind of had even the same protocol working for the connector, but a different mechanism or additional mechanism was there, either in the IPS, for example, or in the connector of the third party IDM. The other challenges which I can think of were of correct attribute mappings, logging, and reporting visibility, as I mentioned before. These are kind of challenges which are coming daily, and I mean we are dealing with them on a day-to-day basis, so they are okay. Another challenge I can think of is on the governance perspective, whether to control the number of sources for these replications, because IPS opens so many opportunities and doors for replication from any target systems. So you can have a permutation of systems to choose from the source. But we need to standardize and control it. So it was a challenge to have it implemented in our organization, so that nobody comes directly that you do this and do this as source.
Okay, now speaking about opportunities, which automated process did you try for SAP Cloud Identity Services?
Well, we have tried a lot of use cases, from user management, for example, creation, updation, attribute mapping, authorization, concept transformation, and also we have also used the pre-configured automation, for example, with success factors and people analytics, which is a standard process coming inbuilt, I would say, with the IPS, for example. So we have kind of explored a lot in this area, and with the POCs, we have got much experience as well.
Okay, now last question. Can you give examples of your cooperation with SAP? Did you successfully request features?
Well, yeah, so good actually, yeah, to highlight this. Yeah, we have been reaching out to SAP through various routes, and some of them have been responded quite rapidly, and some have been considered in long-term roadmaps, and some have been just in the backlog, and we don't know when it will come. But as an example, we have requested for ABAP R3 as source to be included as part of bundled IPS, if I take an example. And then it was some other customers maybe might have requested it because there was a change in the contracts and all. So these many features, I mean, they were requested and they were granted immediately, I would say, on a very short notice, because it was requested by consultation, and NSAP saw that the customers are facing some issues with them. So I think there are a lot of ways, but one of the ways I would say is also an influence platform, where the customers can raise their requirements of missing features, and other customers can just push and uplift that to the development. So it's quite a lot of ways, and I think all are effective if you raise it properly.
Thank you for sharing with us not only your strategy, but also the challenges you are facing on your ongoing journey to the cloud. As we heard, there are considerable benefits that you envision for the final destination, a cloud-based identity and access management. Thank you for choosing SAP as your partner on that journey.
Well, thanks as well for giving the opportunity to share some thoughts, and hope this collaboration will continue as it has been. Thanks so much for inviting.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you, Kashish, for this interview. Bye.
Bye.
Wow, that was also, again, a great customer interview, and you could see how well they were collaborating before, and also honestly speaking about what went well and what also still challenges are. And if we saw the architectural diagram that they have shown, I mean, it is a very complex setup, but I think also as the proof is in the pudding, we are using now this collaboration to really make it work together with the customer. So that's really a nice story. So again, as we will be heading now towards our expert Q&A, I would like you to raise your questions. In case you are not there already, go to saptechcat.com and sign up. And then the questions you can raise on the window, I think here, somewhere at the top, left. Click there on the button to submit your questions. But now, let's bring our security experts on stage with us. And we'll have now Joe, Michael, Anna-Marie, and Matthias here with us. Good evening, or yeah, still good evening. Oh, good morning. Joe is also there, of course, yeah. So great to have you here with us on stage. And we already have some great questions here from the audience. Ceci, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. So I'm not sure who might be able to answer this, maybe Michael. It's a roadmap question. So the question is, do you have a roadmap target date to enable MFA, so multi-factor authentication, for SAP Data Integration Cloud?
So if you asked me to take the question, so I'll do. So in general, yes, we're working to enable all the solutions for MFA.
Mm-hmm.
Many are already done. Specifically, applications running on Business Technology Platform, kind of the newer features at B.
Mm-hmm.
There we still have a gap. We are aware of that. The current plan is that we release that in Q1. For the specific application, I'm not 100% sure, but I assume it's running on BTP. So this would be towards the Q1 timeframe. And in any case, MFA, as you have seen also in the demo before, is an important topic for us. And we're working with all the solutions to enable that as soon as possible.
Excellent. And just kind of as a hint for our audience, specifically for roadmap topics, you can go to roadmaps.sap.com. And that's actually where you can see all the information for the future innovations and everything that we have planned in the next quarters. Right, guys? Okay, good. I see you guys nodding, so that's good.
Yeah, we're nodding.
Yeah.
All right.
So we have another question here coming from the audience. I try to rephrase it a little bit. How are the security teams involved with developers to understand the security checks in the BTP code? Or how can a security person check the code without the need to become an expert developer? Not sure whom I should direct this to. Anyone wants to pick this up?
I'll take a brief shot at that.
Okay.
But I don't think I'm actually addressing the question. But it reminds me of So normally Michael would probably come in behind me and say, actually, Joe, think of it this way. But the question does remind me over what I was saying before about extending the landscape of security into a customer's environment. And there's a couple of investments that we're making at the moment. We talk about the easy things. I say easy, IAM, authorization, et cetera, right? Basically the low-hanging fruit of extending IAM. But now we're actually finding that customers who have our own internally robust security strategy, they're starting to do things like machine learning and AI, and they want to do their own threat detection. And it's interesting, if you think about you doing threat detection with user data, like what are my users doing? Are they logging in? Are they committing transactions that they don't normally commit, et cetera? Well, if you don't have the information that's happening in BTP Core Platform combined with the information that you have on-prem, you're kind of losing out on a great opportunity to join that information together and do some analysis. Again, I don't think I'm speaking to the question, and so I'll toss it over in a second. But one more thing about this. So basically, the point is that we are making investments over the next couple of quarters to basically say, what does it take for us to get this telemetry information about user behavior and give that information back to the customers, so that, by the way, we're going to be collecting that. We're going to be looking for security anomalies and raising those threats to you. But we want to make sure that you have it available as well. In addition to that, when it comes to deploying on the platform and the security configurations that are going into the platform, this is another area where we're basically reinvigorating the investment that we have in that, right? Where now you can come in and you can say, look, I've deployed this on the platform. Can you analyze it for me and give me the data back, right? So for instance, we can send you something like a security score on a platform. You know, your score would be higher if you did this or if you did that, or warning customers. There's a certificate that you're using in the custom domain service that's about to expire, right? We can warn you in advance for that. But I do believe that I'm not exactly addressing the topic here, and so forgive me for going.
Yeah, but I think you are. I think the question was also, do I as developer really need to understand all these security related requirements that I need to build in? And from what I understood from you is that a lot of things are coming along with the security standards and the security solutions from SAP, so that I as a customer can just, let's say, consume the information that is being provided by a specific service. And I think that was also addressing the question, so that you don't really need to be an expert in all those questions.
Yeah. Yeah, the moral of the story is let us do the heavy lifting for you, and
Exactly.
that's what we want to bring to our customers. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, I have another question here. Again, I'm not sure who might be able to take this, and it is quite a long one, so I'll try to kind of simplify it. But basically, this person is asking, so they have a third-party IDM solution because they have ULM access management and access certification and SOD, as compared to two different systems by SAP, IDM and GRC. And the question is, how is SAP looking at this? Can anybody take that?
Sounds like a great question for Michael.
Yeah, I'll take it.
He was already smiling.
And it's right.
You knew it was coming.
If you look on the on-premise side, then we have two solutions, SAP Identity Management and SAP GRC Access Control. Identity Management focusing on kind of the provisioning identity management, and GRC for the compliance SOD checks. And we've built integrations in both worlds, so that kind of either system can be the leading one. Looking to the cloud, we've seen, and I think that the question is raising in that direction, that we want to build an integrated solution. And that's why we partnered with the teams and built the cloud solution from GRC, SAP Identity Access Governance on top of our identity services. So we are avoiding duplicate functionality in the sense that identity authentication and identity provisioning are like the core layers that we'll provide, where identity provisioning takes care of kind of provisioning the users to all the systems, and IAG is built on top of that to ensure that the systems can be managed in a compliant way. And by more and more moving to the cloud, we combine those services together and expose SAP Cloud Identity Access Governance as the common solution for IAM and IAG together, kind of built on the BTP technology.
Excellent, thank you. So, yeah, please go
ahead. I would just add to that we also are focused on supporting industry standards like SCIM. So when you have those solutions, if you're looking for an industry standard way to integrate, we have things like SCIM for identity management, identity provisioning, and SAML on the authentication side. And that's a big push for SAP.
Perfect, thank you. All right, we have a couple more questions here. So do you want me to take the next one?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the next question in the tool is, since biometrics are being used, how is security handling the data retention versus GDPR rules? Michael or Joe, maybe? I don't know.
Should I take that? I think the interesting part, also what we've seen before in Marco's demo, looking at the biometrics, is that we don't store the biometrics on our side. So the biometrics is stored on the client side. So in fact, the FIDO protocol uses public key technology to kind of make sure that we'll know the identity, but the biometric information is stored on the client. It's either like a mobile device or like the Touch ID or Windows Hello, but it's not transferred to the cloud world. So with that split, we store the identification, which can be deleted and will be deleted as part of the usual identity lifecycle, but the biometrical part remains on the client side. And this kind of really reduces the burden to kind of store biometrics and deal with biometrics in the cloud world.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Yeah,
thanks.
I have another question here, also looking to all of you. I like the FIDO demo, but how can I benefit from that if I use my own identity provider?
Well, if you're using a corporate identity provider, that's I guess there's two scenarios here, right? There might be the notion of using social authentication, right? And so in other words, if you're logging into the platform and you're using a social identity provider, Facebook login or something like that, then it's really weird. It's kind of like follow the bouncing ball, right? If Facebook offered, FIDO in biometric authentication, you could use it against Facebook, and then we would get the OAuth token or something along those lines. But I think the answer to the question is, it just depends on what your home realm authentication provider is. If you're using SAP natively, you're going to get the capability. If you're using something in your own environment, just simply the fact that we support FIDO, but your corporation is connecting to us via SAML, it's not necessarily going to make the connection that, oh, you're using FIDO in the background. Like if there's an intermediate identity provider, it's really that intermediate identity provider's responsibility to provide that technology. Now, I could be a little wrong on here, so I'll toss it over to Matthias and Michael too. Am I missing something here that you think I might be missing, or is this fairly accurate?
You're totally fine. I think if the authentication is handled by the third-party IDP, then it's the third-party IDP that covers that. I think we can help in showing that the functionality exists. We also have a scenario where even so authentication happens with third-party, we can do like the second factor via FIDO, but I would say it's a rather uncommon scenario, but customers either fully use our identity services or fully refer to kind of the other IDP. And in that sense, yeah, I think we want to promote that this is a going forward technology, and other IDPs will provide that as well, or do provide that as well.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. All right. So I have maybe a shorter one. I just wanted to kind of point this out. So how, as a customer, how do I know when to use SAP SSO or the Cloud Identity Authentication Service? Maybe Michael or Matthias, I don't know.
Matthias, do you want to cover that?
Yeah, that's a good, simple one, yes. Yeah. So SAP Signal is on, long time in the market already. So it's still used by many customers. If you're using SAP GUI or SAP GUI for Windows, where it's still required. If you're looking at Identity Authentication Service, that's based on the open standard, like XAML, like OpenID Connect. It's not designed for SAP GUI or for any native clients. And so in the web world, we recommend to use Identity Authentication Service. And of course, if you have something like an SAP Fiori and you have a web interface, one is perhaps on-premise, the other one is in the cloud, then of course customers will use Identity Authentication to have seamless single sign-on across a hybrid landscape.
Excellent. Maybe just one more question we can ask. So and I will take it from the Q&A tool. So you have a lot of very big security initiatives ongoing. What are your teams doing to ensure all team services are implementing the best security standards into the product? And I think, Joe, that kind of alludes to what you were talking about earlier about drinking our own champagne, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. If you were to ask me, what are the priorities on your roadmap for the next couple of quarters? Let me put it this way. We've made a pretty significant investment in the security team, right? So the number of priorities that we're able to handle, like walk and chew gum at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that we're working on at the moment. But what we do internally is there's a couple different steps that SAP goes through to basically mandate software security standards. Anytime we develop something where we basically say, and identity is the easy one, right? Every application needs to be able to use or needs to be forced to use this identity. So the identity provider, for example. So again, I don't want to go into too much detail here because I don't think it's necessarily helpful to everybody. But for instance, we have a very detailed process that goes through the central product architecture team. We develop technical guidelines from that. Then we go basically into an adoption phase and then what we call like an obligatory adoption phase, right? So right now we track the adoption of the mandated security components and we enforce that. And it's a fairly rigid process. And so let me just sum it up with this way, because I don't want to provide too much unnecessary data here, but if your organization is not onboarding to our mandated security policies, right, and again, that includes something like IAM, certain encryption and cryptography profiles and whatnot, your team ends up in a report that you don't want to be on, right? And so internally in the company, we have a fairly rigid process for making sure that we've developed the right strategy and making sure that the different teams that are adopting those strategies. So I'm not entirely sure if Michael, you want to provide any more color on that, but I think that kind of answers the question. I mean, again, without going into too much detail,
I think
it's a fairly strong process. Yeah.
I think that's fine.
That's excellent. Yeah, and we're actually a little bit out of time. So thank you so much for answering all those questions, and thank you for joining us today. But yeah,
thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, continue enjoying TechEd then.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Wow. So, Ceci, where can we learn more about security? We learned a lot today, right? And what should the audience maybe keep in mind?
Yeah, so there are, of course, as with all the topics, there are more sessions dedicated to learning more in SAP TechEd. So you're going to see them pop up on screen. Those are the sessions that we recommend actually to continue learning about the security topics. Again, all the content is available on demand. So if you already missed one of these sessions, don't worry. You can always check it out later and just watch the recording. And we weren't able to cover all the questions that came in the Q&A tool. So I want to remind everybody that you can go to community.sap.com. You can use the Q&A forum. You can add your questions there. And just remember to tag them with the relevant products that you're asking about. So for example, in this case, you could tag it with SAP Cloud Identity Services. And the same goes when you're watching the recording, when you're rewatching the sessions. If you have questions, of course, the Q&A tool will not be available then. The chat will not be available then. But you're going to be able to use the community to continue engaging with the experts and get answers to your questions. Not only from SAP experts, but you also get answers from the community as well. So external SAP, non-SAP people, let's say, external community members. And as always, we do have the Keep Learning tab on the SAP TechEd website. So remember, if you want to find learning journeys or just general learning content or specific SAP TechEd pages on the community, you can click on Keep Learning and go either to the SAP Learning Zone or to the Discover More tag and just find more relevant learning content.
Not to forget that you get also discount on certifications. So don't forget that one, also important.
Definitely, only if you register for the event, right?
SAPTechEd.com, yeah.
Exactly.
And as you heard, Business Technology Platform is the place to go. Also, you can use it. There are a lot of services already on the free tier service plans. Yeah. Use them.
And one little thing, since we were mentioning the community, I think we mentioned it earlier as well, but in the community, there's this new thing called groups, and there's actually one for TechEd, so there's a TechEd group in the community. And there's a thread open there with kind of all about Casimir, so our cute little official TechEd mascot. And the link is actually in that thread, so you can download the photo of Casimir, and you can print out maybe a shirt like this one, which is super cool.
Or a cap.
Or
a cup.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Or a hat, or you can do a cup, or you can do basically anything with you want, just downloading the sticker and printing it on anything that you want.
And with that said, I think we're closing the hour. Thank you so much, and continue watching SAP TechEd and Channel 1. Bye-bye.
Here at Channel 1 at TechEd, and I got a break. DJ and Vitali pulled me out for a run. This was good. This was re-energizing me this afternoon. How about you, Orla? You got a good break?
I did, but unlike you boys, us girls have to take care of the hair and makeup. So I went for a nice long walk, and I got a lovely coffee, and I am ready to go. Cool.
And we're here in the developer lab, so I love it. I love the artwork in the back. It's a lot of great things from the Devtoberfest and also, of course, the developer keynote. It was a highlight for me, and I want to say also thanks to the team for putting it together, the developer advocates, but also everybody who helped them. It was a big, big team to come up with the story and come up with the creative idea to really pull it off. So kudos to you guys. Really, really great. This hour is about spend management. So spend management, it's a lot of different products which fall into the categories from Fieldglass, Ariba, Concur, and the